Mark. Welcome to Becoming Okay. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Megan. How about you? Thanks again for having me.
It's so wonderful to see you again. It's been way too long since we last spoke. And it was funny because I was chatting to a friend yesterday on WhatsApp and she actually mentioned about some of the content I was sharing over the past year. And she brought up, oh, I remember distinctly you chatting to some Navy SEAL guy and it just like really changed things for me. And I was like, no way. I was like, I'm chatting to him tomorrow.
That's
How
great.
crazy. Yeah, so excited. There's obviously several parts I want to go over with you again. But I really want to take the conversation around mindset, resilience, and just how a lot of us have really focused on looking after our physical health, but maybe not our mental health so much. And I know you've definitely been in both those buckets very deeply. So let's just start with probably the most memorable story you ever shared with me, and that was your toughest moment during Hell Week. I wonder if you can
Uh,
just take us back there.
uh, okay. So, um, Hell Week is just that, and it's the fifth week of 26 weeks of training. The initial round of training, called BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training, and everybody thinks that Hell Week is kind of the climax, so it should be towards the end. But the reality is, it's 5 of 26 weeks, and it hits you right up front, and then believe it or not, it gets harder from that point. But 127 hours long, you get 4 hours of sleep. That's not 4 hours a night; it's 4 hours total, broken up into little chunks during the week. And uh, Monday night, we're at dinner. One of the things that they do during that week is they feed you really well because they gotta keep you going. And we're at dinner, and I'm sitting at the table, and Chris Volk, one of the other officers in my class, is sitting beside me. And Monday night is really tough, Megan, because mentally you're still sharp, right? You haven't, you're not a zombie yet. You're not dulled mentally, and so you know what's coming. And the evolutions that you face, the training evolutions that you face on Monday night, are exceedingly challenging. There's Lions Lope, there's Steel Piers, there's a few that are particularly devious. And I know that this is coming, and I'm sitting beside Chris Volk, and I'm having one of those fight or flight moments. And I whispered, I mean, barely said it out loud to Chris. I was like, "Hey man, this is crazy. I don't know that I can do this. Like, this is way more than I thought it would be." And he just gets this blank stare on his face. And the next thing I know, someone grabs me by the back of my shirt and picks me up out of my chair and throws me up against the wall and spins me around and then grabs me by my collar and picks me up off the floor. And it's Chief Leif Cairns. And Chief Cairns was the first phase chief instructor who was really responsible in the SEAL teams. The chiefs, the chief, senior chief, master chiefs, we call it the goat locker. They're really responsible for developing the young junior officers and helping them understand what it means to lead in the SEAL teams, what it takes to be an officer and lead SEALs in combat. And Chief Cairns has me pinned up against the wall. My feet are like this high off the ground, and he's got me, and he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, sir, you get yourself ready to train, you get your men ready to train, you get out on your boats and get yourself together. And don't you ever embarrass me." And I was like, "Okay, got it." And I never, after that moment, I was fine. But the point of the story is you never really know, when someone is struggling. Maybe they'll say something, maybe they won't. And if they say something and you pick up on it, great, act on it. But if you're just intuitive enough to see that someone might be struggling mentally, physically, or emotionally, you never really know and can fully understand the impact that you can have on someone in those moments of crisis, right? Whether it's suicidal, whether it's just, a breaking point, whatever it is, if you can step in and kind of change the trajectory and recalibrate them mentally, you can change the trajectory of their life. And in that moment, Leif Cairns, he changed the trajectory of my life for sure. I guess, and why, Leif and I are really good friends to this day. We actually, the unique thing about the SEAL teams is, you could be an instructor, you could be in the cadre at Buds one day, and you can be a student that day. And the next day when you graduate, that cadre member and you might go to SEAL Team 5, which is what happened, and serve together. And so Leif and I went to Team 5 after I finished Buds, and we served together for a number of years. And still to this day, Leif attends a number of my foundation events, and we talk about that moment. And Leif says he just saw something in me that he knew was worth trying to save and trying to help me overcome that moment of challenge. Because usually the instructors, when there's blood in the water, the sharks are circling, and they want to drive you out. And Leif took the opposite approach with me, and really is responsible for helping me in my moment figure out what it took to tap into that extra 60% that we have, and dig in and not quit. So that's my Monday night of hell week fight or flight moment. And we all have them. That's the thing about Buds, is everybody has that moment. And I talk a lot in the keynotes that I give, and just the leadership coaching that I do with whether it be a coach in the NBA or college or NFL, or my corporate leaders. I talk about the power of focusing on others more than you focus on yourself, and caring for others more than you care for yourself as a leader, and how powerful that could be. And the challenge that I have to people when I'm telling that story is, how much more powerful could the world be? How much better a place could it really be if we all took a moment, and rather than think about ourselves and what's in it for me, or how do I get the most out of this, how do I look around at my teammates and figure out who's struggling as much, if not more, than I am, and help them? And what that does is a couple of things. One, it changes people's lives, right? The person that's struggling, and it changes yours in a lot of ways, because you see the power behind being a selfless servant and helping people realize and achieve the goals and aspirations that they have.
Can I ask you that having that moment of, I suppose you could say tough love, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
for me, in
That's a
that
great way to
moment,
put it. Being held up against the wall by your neck. Yeah, that's tough love.
if someone did that to me, I would have done the opposite. I would have ran. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would have ran away. You ran towards it. I wonder, is that something that's always been in your nature as maybe, I don't know, a masculine man, to be able to take that and not uh,
Great
be
question.
emotionally overwhelmed by it? Or do you
Yeah.
think that the military trains you to have that mindset?
That's a really great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before. My gut response to that, without having time to kind of
Mm.
process, but you know, my life before that was athletics, competitive athletics. I football, basketball, baseball. I swam competitively in the summers. I played college football, and had just finished, 4 years of varsity football at the Naval Academy. And part of me was always that way, right? Like there's challenge, there's adversity, there's pushing yourselves through perceived limits, all of that, when you're in competitive sports. So I think there was a component of my psyche or my persona that was wired that way. Um, but I've also always been one, I think, innately, that I respond to challenge. People ask me all the time, Mark, why were you a SEAL? Like, what do you think it is about you? And I tell them the same thing. Like, I'm an average guy. I'm 6 feet tall, 185 pounds. And if you put me on a street corner, there'd be 10 of me by in 30 minutes, right? Nothing remarkable. But there is something different about the way I respond, I think, and all SEALs to that regard. respond to those moments. And we like to say we're ordinary men placed in extraordinary circumstances, and for some reason we respond. And I instinctively, when someone showed me care or love or concern or some confidence in my ability to do these incredibly difficult things, I didn't want to let him down. And his line about "Don't ever embarrass me," I mean, I still hear his voice saying that to me, and that had more power, more persuasion over me than anything else. Anyone, those words really, because I think it goes back. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I think it goes back to my dad. Because growing up, I never feared, capital punishment, the swat on the tush when I was out of line. But what I was overwhelmingly crippling and just painful for me was to hear my father say, "I'm disappointed in you." And I didn't ever want that. And in some ways, I think that might have played into it too. The choice of his words taking me back to my childhood and how my father raised me.
Because I was going to ask you about this need to be selfless and this teamwork ethic when you're a Navy SEAL or in the military in general. And I wonder then, to your point there, it's almost ingrained in you that you cannot let someone down.
Yeah, period. That is the ultimate sin, if you will, in the SEAL teams. Like I talk about mission planning a lot, strategic planning, I call it in the corporate space or in the sports world. And the way I teach that is we always started with the end state in mind. So we call that commander's intent, right? The desired end state we're trying to bring about. It describes the conditions that dictate ultimate success. And once we have our commander's intent, that desired end state, we reverse plan off of it and identify all the tactical steps that we have to accomplish in order to bring about that end state. And so, what are you doing really? Well, I tell people it's like getting in a car. And when you get in a car, you don't just aimlessly drive, right? You have a specific destination that you're trying to get to. So you program in your GPS the address, and that address is singular, like it's unique. There's only one of them in the entire world. So that's commander's intent, the desired end state. And then what does the GPS do? It builds a series of turns and routes that lead you to that outcome. So what are we doing? We're creating a process. And so many organizations that I work with and so many people are hung up on outcomes. They focus on outcomes and that's all they care about versus building great processes that lead to outcomes. There's a whole talk track about why that's so important, about taking pressure off people, about building repeatable, sustainable, scalable processes that lead to great outcomes. But when we mission plan, yeah, we've got our overall mission plan. That's my job to put it together. But each one of my teammates has specific responsibilities that they've got to put a plan together around. My point men, they're responsible for routes in and routes out off a target. My communicators are responsible for our communication plan. Our corpsmen are responsible for our medical plan. Like everybody has their little part to the plan. I take all those small parts and assimilate them into the big plan. But ultimately, what we're counting on, this idea of selfless service and not letting people down, is I'm counting on each one of my teammates to follow their process, and they're counting on me to follow the process. And if we all do that and we don't let each other down, the likelihood is we'll get to that desired end state. We know our processes work. And so that's how we accomplish some of the most challenging tasks in the world. We don't get invited to the party when things are going well. We get invited to the party when other special operations forces have analyzed a mission set and they've said one of two things, it's outside of our capabilities or this is impossible. That's when I get invited to the party. So if I'm hung up on an outcome and not a process that leads me to an outcome, I have no chance of being successful. And that's what I really coach to with my sports teams and with my corporate leaders as well, helping them come up with strategic plans that build processes that help people get to outcomes versus hanging an outcome and saying, go figure it out.
It's gonna sound like
Long winded, sorry.
going no, it's gonna sound like I'm going on a slight tangent, but, so my journey since we last spoke has been very much one of learning about self-help, and a lot of what you see online when it comes to self-help is the opposite of selfless. It's to actually be selfish, and people equate that to self-care. I wonder, being on a Navy SEAL team like you had for so long and always having to put other people's needs before yours, did you ever lose yourself in the process of that?
I think we all do at points, right? The business of warfare, especially special operations, is a very intense, it's a very violent world. And you can lose yourself in that world and forget who you are. I think the best way I've ever heard it put is they train us to be monsters, right? That's what they're trying to produce is a monster. But they want us to be guided by the very principles and values that we stand for so that we don't do monstrous things. And in that world, sometimes, unfortunately, violence has to be met with violence, and it's a proportional response. And you can, and in fact, I did for a while. I struggled. Uh, One of the biggest challenges I've ever had is self-loathing, actually, Megan, because I started to like the things that I was doing a little too much, and I lost my way. And there's a whole, faith-based component to that. And I always thought that, growing up in a small town that was very Southern Baptist in its roots and its religion, its faith, and seeing some of the things that I saw, doing some of the things that I was doing, I couldn't reconcile. And I started to say to myself, if there truly is this God and he's all knowing and all loving and all benevolent, then how can there be a place in heaven for a person like me that's doing the things that I'm doing and liking the things that I'm doing a little too much? And one of my coaches, I'll never forget this, talk about those moments, right? Like, God, the hand of God coming in and introducing an angel into your life at just the right moment. Billy Kennedy. Billy was the head basketball coach at Texas A&M University, very successful. And Billy has Parkinson's disease, and he stares at his own mortality every time he looks in the mirror because there's no cure. And he's got a clock ticking, and he knows it. And he bought a property outside of College Station, where the university is, that was going to be kind of his, like, right off into the sunset property. And he was going to build this really nice house. And we had a home game that day. And after pregame meal, he says, "Hey, Commander, why don't you come out to the property with me? I got something I got to look at. I want you to go with me." I was like, "Sure, coach." Thinking we're just going to go walk the dirt, and kind of, talk about the game or strategy or whatever. And we're walking through the woods, and it's a beautiful day. And it's like the sunbeams are coming through the trees. And it's just one of those kind of surreal moments. And Coach Kennedy's walking in front of me, and he turns around and he looks me right in the eye and he goes, "What's wrong with you?" And I was, "What?" He goes, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Coach, I'm great." And he goes, "That's one." And he asked me again, he goes, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Coach, I'm fine. Like, what? I'm great." Like, and he goes, "Okay, if you lie to me again, I'm never going to work with you. We're done." And I was like, Where's he going? Like, what is this?" And started thinking, and Coach Kennedy's a very mild mannered, soft kind of guy. And he said it. He goes, "There's something deeply wrong with you. What is it?" And I don't know why, but I just said, "Coach, I don't like myself very much." And he goes, "Yeah, I could see that." Um, and I started talking to him about the same thing that I just shared about the self-loathing. I said, when I'm in front of people, I can be this 10 feet tall, bulletproof person, personality, all that. But when I'm alone, I want to crawl out of my own skin. Like I can't stand it. And he said, "You don't get it, do you?" And I said, "Well, clearly, coach, I don't, but if you have words of wisdom, I'd love to hear them." And he said, "God had to put you through the things that he put you through in order to build you into the instrument that he needed for you to help other people." So I had to go to those dark places in order to understand them and experience them firsthand, so that I would have not only the true empathy to really understand people at their worst moments, to be there for them. And it changed the way I look at my life. I'm not perfect. Still a work, in progress, but it really had a profound impact on me. So again, it's that Leif Cairns in that moment, Billy Kennedy in that moment, right? Like, so I've been very blessed and very fortunate to have people around me that espoused and lived this, care for others more than you care for yourself, and step in and help them when they needed it.
I really like that. It makes me think about the whole talk around how can you really know or appreciate the highs if you haven't been through those lows? Like if we
100%.
were just always stagnant, how do we even know what a high looks like or feels like to be able to compare it?
That's right. I don't want someone that's undefeated. I don't want someone that's never lost. I want someone that's experienced what that feels like, and they know it firsthand, so that they truly understand what that means, and what it takes to be successful and overcome challenge and adversity.
How did you then redefine your purpose once you left that Navy SEAL environment? Something you've always known day in and day
God,
out.
that's the $1,000,000 question. So, in the teams, you go from this externally driven life where, they're telling you what to do, when to do it, how to
Mm.
do it, all that. And everything that you do has a purpose. Like it shows up immediately, the impact that you're having. Like when we were prosecuting these capture kill missions of high value targets, we could see the impact that it would have on the battle space immediately. And when you leave that world, you go to a world where now you've got to be internally driven. You've got to find that drive yourself because nobody's doing it for you. And you've got to find your purpose. What is it that you're supposed to be doing? And that's where our guys really struggle, is they can't make that transition. And again, I got another angel, Billy Lang, another basketball coach that really started me in my business. Um, he helped me understand, what I was supposed to be doing in helping other people. Like he saw my business and I didn't. Like I had no clue, and I thought I was just helping a friend. And he said, "No, no, no, you don't." And he started promoting me to all these other coaches that he knew, and describing what I'd done for him. And I kept telling him, "Hey, coach, stop. Like I'm not doing this." And he goes, "No, no, 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 you don't understand." And from that business, I was able to start my foundation, the SEAL Legacy Foundation. And that really has given me, between the business of helping people achieve their goals, their dreams, their aspirations, be it sport or corporate, and then the foundation being there for families in their worst moments. It's been this incredibly cathartic experience for me, and it's really helped me understand what my purpose is. So now externally, I'm driven by helping clients succeed, helping raise money for the families of our fallen and wounded SEALs. And then the purpose shows up in the rings that I have right up there behind you, all the championships that my teams have gone on to win, and the families that we've been able to support and help. It's been amazing. So I've been very blessed and very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in.
Can you imagine how much better the world would be if we all just had a little bit more of
Yeah.
that selfless mindset? Like, I wonder how you even comprehend being around someone, like, especially in the corporate realm, that's very only focused on them or a little bit self-centered and egotistical, like how do you even address or begin to have a conversation with someone like that?
Well, it's interesting. I've got a client that I'm working with now that I won't, I'll protect them. I'm not going to say who they are, but it's a massive company, and they're one of the best in class. Like they're doing really really well. But one of the things that I've uncovered in my time with them is they are 1,000% focused on outcomes. That's it. That's all that matters to them is book of business. And if there was a list of 10 things that the criteria that would determine what your title or your influence inside that organization was or is, the first 8 would be size of your book of your business. Then it would be the respect and reputation that you have. And then the last one would be the title that you got. But when you have an organization that's solely focused on outcomes like that, it allows all these unscrupulous behaviors and sort of undermining and all the bad things to really kind of take over. And they haven't and they won't change. Like there's no appetite for change there. And until they realize that it's going to take a drastic departure. And the industry that they're in, everyone's like that, everyone. And that's the sad part of it. And so I feel like I'm Atlas, holding the world up with them and pushing the stone up the hill because they don't get it. They don't see the need for change yet. I'm hopeful and optimistic that they will, but until they do, they're just going to be caught in this same vicious cycle where they can expect what they're getting on a regular basis, and it's not what they want.
And do you think that's because people just aren't comfortable with change, or is it that whole having
That's a
to?
lot of it. Yeah, that's a lot of
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it's change. What I've seen is change is a 4-letter word, and people are definitely afraid of it. And what they're doing works, right? They're incredibly successful. They're a juggernaut, and they can continue on this path if they want, and they'll be successful, right? But I don't like that word. One of the other things that I coach to Megan is I don't like the word success. Success in my book is an individual characteristic, and you can have successful players on teams or workers in a corporate setting that are successful, but the team itself or the company is struggling. And that creates that me sort of world. And I like to instead coach to significance. I want to help a team or a company become significant. And if you can help a company or team become significant, then everyone shares in that success. And that's really what you want is significance versus success. So, but change is such a 4-letter word in that world, and change is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, but it has that negative connotation to it, and it's really hard to lead. There's a great book. There's a fantastic book called It Starts With One. I think there are 3 iterations of it out now, but the first one was incredibly impactful for me personally. And it's really kind of a part of how I coach change. And the author talks about leaders being able to create a clear and compelling contrast, not picture, but contrast as to why people need to change. Contrast being, hey, this is the way we're doing it. It's an if then statement, basically. If we continue to do what we're doing, how we're doing it, this is what we'll get. But if we change, then this is what we could become or could get. And that if then is very powerful than just telling somebody, hey, we have to change and here's what we're going to do versus the why and the how and all that. And so uh, what happens in that is leaders have to echo that contrast. They've got to continuously remind people of the why, but they also have to help them avoid the 2 biggest pitfalls of change, and that's people getting tired and people getting lost. Tired They get tired of doing things the new right way because the old way produced, predictable results. And especially men derive 90% of their self-worth and value from their work, right? That really defines their success, if you will, or their self-value to this world, which is really wrong. But anyway, so they get tired of doing this new way that doesn't produce the results that the old way did. And it's inertia. You got to get it going and you got to get repetitions and you're not going to be as good at it. But eventually it'll click. And then you start, vertical with success. And they get tired. They get tired of doing or lost. They get lost and they forget that contrast as to why they needed to change in the first place. So, incredibly compelling book. The best part about it is the second half. The first half is all the theory and science behind change management. And the second half of the book it's filled with all these real world examples of corporate executives that led organizational transformation and how they did it and the impact that it had and where they were versus where they are now. And those stories are very relevant, right? And it really cements things and gives people that aha moment of what this could be. If we try this new way, then we could get these results. So
Do you know what you can actually help me to understand today? Because I've been deep diving into, I suppose it's very relevant. We're talking about fear. We're talking about feeling uncomfortable, and our minds, or the way our anxiety speaks to us, is it doesn't know the difference between a line coming at you versus receiving an email from your boss. Like, how we cope with those emotions, those feelings, is very similar. But you've been in both worlds,
yeah.
where you have been in fighting for your life versus seeing people react the same in the corporate realm, but nothing's going to kill them. Like,
Yeah,
how do you coach people through that?
so okay, that's a great. So that's a dogma that I dispel right up front, right? And here's what I mean by that, right? So yeah, I get it all the time. Hey, Mark, I get it why this works in your world because it's life and death. Yeah, okay, right.
Mm.
But as a head basketball coach in the NBA, if you aren't successful, if you aren't helping your team become significant, you're fighting for your coaching life. And if you aren't able to produce the results that the owner and the team needs, you're going to be cordially invited to seek opportunity elsewhere. So you're going to lose that life. And the CEOs, it's the same thing. You're fighting for your corporate life every day. And unless you adopt that mindset, the mastering of the right here, right now, um, you're going to lose that life, if you will. And so that's how I relate it and impress upon them the importance of. I talk about this analogy. Do you know what FUN stands for? The fierce urgency of now. So I want to have fun, but I also have to understand that right here, right now is all that matters. And in my world, I can't worry about what happened. I can't worry about what's coming. If I don't master and take care, dominate what we call dominate this moment, I'm not getting to that next moment. And I'm certainly not getting to the aftermath post-op where we sit down and talk about what happened and debrief it and learn our lessons. So I've got to be present. I've got to be where my feet are and I've got to own the moment that I'm in and I've got to have fun.
I was going to ask you what you think is the biggest mindset trap that holds people back. And I was thinking, if I was to ask you in the context of being in a war zone, I'm sure many people have said, like, I can't do it. Like, you obviously
Okay.
had your moment.
Yeah.
What have you said to people that have said that to you? I can't do this.
100% understandable. One. But two, if you choose that, that's on you, right? But you're going to have to live with that, right? You're going to have to live with the fact that when metal hit metal, you weren't there for your teammates because they're counting on you to do your job. So you can, get caught up and overwhelmed in this me preservation cycle, or you can break it by saying, I need to be there for my teammates and help them be successful.
You know, when you've like throughout this conversation, you've been saying, oh, this person, this memory stayed with me from what this person said, or they were my angel. I think I remember telling you that you were that for me. So when we first spoke, you said to me about this 40% mindset, and I want you to share it with us in a second.
Yeah.
But I remember you telling me that, and it was one of the things that it just stuck with me forever. You know, you have those moments where someone says something like you've had, and it just sticks. And I went on my first hike with my partner, and it was a 7.5 hour hike for the first time I'd ever done anything more than a long dog walk. And I got to the final peak, like the final summit, and I said, I can't do this. And I started crying. And there's kids that are walking past me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like such a failure. I can't physically do this. And I remember exactly what you told me.
Oh,
And I
wow.
wanted you to share the story.
Yeah. So, most people, um, they've gotten to the point physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever it is, where they think their fun meter is pegged, right? Their ability to give any more, they're exhausted. But the studies will show you that when you feel that way, when you're at that moment, you're only about 40% tapped into what you have. There's a whole nother 60% of reserves that is waiting. And it's that small percentage of the population that figures out how to tap into that extra 60 that breaks through. And that's one of the main points of Hell Week that they're trying to teach us is when you feel like you've given everything that you can give, no, you've got 60 more percent that's waiting. But how do you mentally, how do you engage the most powerful weapon you have? And that's your brain that says, my body it can't take another step. It can't swim anymore. It can't run anymore. It can't do another pull up, another push up. Like I'm done. But the reality is you got so much more. And so Hell Week teaches us how to get into that 60%, how to flip that switch and access those reserves. And that's one of the things that, I can't put you in Hell Week, if you're a corporate or a sports partner or client. Now I offer, it's really fun. Anybody out there that's listening, we do Hell Week experiences, both on the corporate and the team side, and they're incredibly fun. They're challenging, but it's a way for you to learn a lot about yourself, a lot about teamwork, communication, mental, physical toughness. But one of the things that we teach you is how to get into that 60%, and how to access that when you think you're done. And that's the biggest part of it is helping people realize they have so much more, so much more. And if they just get out of their own way, a lot of it comes back to focusing on others more than yourself. Like when I was at my worst during Hell Week and felt like I couldn't take another step, I mean, because you get that every day, like every evolution during Hell Week, you get to that point. Um, I just had to stop focusing on myself and throwing my own pity party and look at my teammates and say, Chris or Tristan or Joe or whoever, I can see they're struggling as much, if not more than me. So I'm going to go help them. I'm going to help them overcome whatever challenge they're facing. And you forget about how cold, how wet, and tired you are. And before you know it, the two of you are over, around, through whatever seemed so daunting beforehand. But that's a way that you can tap into that 60% with not even, with not even thinking about it really.
Hmm. I remember my legs just like couldn't move. And I was like, no, because it's all in the mind. It's all on your own mindset. And I wonder if that's the dopamine hit, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's when people put themselves through high pressure, challenging situations and it's feeling like you won and you overcome something you felt like you could never achieve.
Well, think
That's the
about how you
rush.
felt. Think about the feeling that you had when you did when you had that moment, that breaking
Mm,
point, and then you took that next step. Wasn't easy, right? Probably hurt. And then that next one, and then that next one. That's a lot of what they try to teach in Hell Week, right? So when Hell Week starts on a Sunday, you don't know when it's going to start, ends on a Friday, you don't know when it's going to end. And when you first start, you're fixated on Friday and being secured from Hell Week, like finishing it, right? That's your goal, is get me to Friday. But then you figure out real fast that's way down the line. If I'm focused on that, I'm never going to get there. So then you start, okay, it's Sunday. Let me just get to Monday, right? And then you figure out, okay, Monday, now just get me to Tuesday. And then you figure out, oof, this ain't gonna work. Now I got to start focusing on even smaller bites. It's breakfast. Let me just get to lunch. I'll quit when lunch comes. And then when lunch comes, you say, okay, I'll quit when dinner comes. And then when dinner comes, you say, I'll quit when mid-rats, the midnight meal that you get. And then it goes even smaller than that. It's, hey, I'm starting this evolution. When this evolution is over, I'll quit then. And then when that evolution is over, I'll quit then. And so you chunk it, right? And it starts with this lofty goal in mind, and then you chunk it down into just 24-hour blocks, and then it goes down into like 4-hour blocks, meal to meal, and then it's evolution to evolution. And for you, it was, let me just take one step. Okay, when I take that step, let me take another one. Like, there's a great story. You've probably seen the movie Lone Survivor about Marcus Luttrell, right? So, Marcus had been shot multiple times. He'd been blown up by RPGs 3 times. His body was riddled with shrapnel. He'd broken his back. He had a massive concussion. He'd bitten his tongue off and swallowed it. I mean, he was in awful, awful shape. And Marcus knew he needed to move in order to survive. And so his response to that was he reached out as far as he could with his hand and he drew a line in the sand and he crawled to it. And when he got to that line, he reached out again and drew another one and he crawled to it. 7 miles later, Megan, he was rescued. 7 miles. So that's the power of one step. When I take that one step, I'll quit. All right. Give me one more step, then I'll quit. It's just, but how did you feel when you got to that summit? Right? Like that dopamine hit, that high of overcoming something that you thought was so insurmountable. You'll never forget that feeling. Like you'll never forget that feeling. And that's something that you can hold on to and you can access to help you when the next challenge comes. So it's a self-propelling, perpetuating, source of inspiration and motivation to continue to overcome all these challenges that life is going to send your way.
That makes so much sense. I spoke to someone the other day that's going to come on the podcast, and he had a car accident, and he was literally, the paramedics, they all just thought he was gone, and he kept telling himself, just count to 10 or count back from 10 and let go. And every time he got to 0, he'd start again at 10. And he was going round and round, and it lasted for like an hour. And I was thinking, well, you said after the first time, once you got to 0, you'd stop. But he kept going and going and going.
Yeah.
And I suppose in those super challenging moments, or, life or death moments, it's different, but it's so hard going about your day to day and having a struggle or a wobble and being completely consumed by everyone else's, like you said, definition of success, everyone else's purpose, everyone else's goals. And it's always ingrained to have like a 5-year plan or something like that. So when you hear to take step by step, it's almost contradicting. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. I'm going to do something for you. Hold on.
Go on.
All right. This changed my life.
Okay.
All right. That same basketball coach I was talking about, Billy Lang, who saw my business before I ever did. I'll never forget this. He's working for the Philadelphia 76ers, and we're in Philly. We had a home game. After the game, 2 of us, we go out to a local pub, and we're sitting at the bar. And he says to me, he goes, Mark, what does ultimate success look like for you? What? Ultimate success? Like, I'm just hanging out in Philadelphia with my buddy having a beer, right? Like, what are you talking about? And he goes, no, seriously. And he took a napkin, Megan, and he did this. At the top of it, he drew a box that says ultimate success, right? And then he did this. He drew a box that said work life and personal life, right?
Right.
Okay. Then
The
he did this.
anticipation.
Then he did this. He drew a dotted line down the center and then
Mm-hmm.
solid lines on the right and left. What does that look like to you?
A road.
Hey, right? So you are in a car in the middle of the road
Mm-hmm.
and you're driving that car. Ultimate success is unique. There's one address in the world that would represent ultimate success for you. This can be your professional life, your personal life, your legacy, doesn't matter, right? And that's the hard part, is figuring out what ultimate success looks like for you, personally, professionally, legacy, whatever it is, right? And your job is to drive that car to ultimate success. But we all know sometimes we focus more on our work life. So we're pulling hard to the left, right? And if we do that, if we only focus on our work life, what happens? We veer off to the left and we'll miss. We'll never get to ultimate success. Some people, they focus only on their personal lives and they pull hard to the right and they're going to miss off to the right. So on this napkin, he said to me, "Hey, Mark, you got to figure out, you got to take a hard look at what ultimately, you got to be able to define it. And I mean, with specificity, with granularity, what does that mean to you? And then every day you've got to ask yourself, okay, I'm going to sit down with that napkin and I'm going to ask myself, which way did I pull today? Well, I pulled hard to the left and I've got to pull to the right tomorrow to get the car back in the center of the road to keep it pointed. And I do this. I mean, my girlfriend and my little one, our 3-year-old is right in the other room, and I travel like crazy. I'm gone every week. I leave tomorrow and I'm gone for 4 days, and I come home from that and I leave and I'm gone for 3 days. Like I go weeks, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks consecutively on the road, and I'm pulling hard to the left. And when I come home, I know because I pull out my napkin and it's a visual reminder to me, hey, I've got to be where my feet are. I've got to be in the moment right here, right now, because little Eleanor needs dad and Nicole needs Mark. And I've got to give them what I can give them to get the car back in the middle of the road. And so this simple blueprint will change people's lives. Like this little thing right here, that's simple, and help you stay more balanced and centered in your world. But it'll also help you figure out what you're trying to accomplish, because that's the hardest part, is figuring out what ultimate success looks like.
I've got to ask you, do you think going right back, almost to childhood, like, do you think you're born the way you're born? Do you think high performers are born? Or do you
No,
think you can train them?
I think to some degree, yes, but I've seen enough at the Naval Academy and the SEAL teams, the sports world, the corporate world. I've seen people that have grown into great leaders. And it's a few things. One, they have an unquenchable thirst for continuous development. They're never satisfied with what they're doing and how they're doing it. They're always open to learning new things and exploring new paths, and seeing what works and what doesn't. Because some of it is applicable and some of it isn't, but at least you tried, right? And I think the other thing is they have a tremendous amount of humility. They're able to take the mistakes that they've made. They don't focus on the wins. The wins aren't what defines you, right? Those are easy. Wins are easy. What really speaks to your true character and what you're made of and the potential that you have is how you respond to challenge and adversity. When you get knocked down, how are you going to get back up? And more importantly, what are you going to learn from that experience? And how are you going to apply those lessons? Because I, I, I I really focus and stress to my leaders, whether it's sport or corporate, that mistakes are actually golden opportunities. They're golden opportunities if handled the right way by leaders. If the leader made the mistake, then they're the first one to admit it, right? They're not above the law, and they want to set a tone where we want mistakes, right? Like we say in the SEAL teams, I want you moving fast and breaking stuff. And I want you doing that in training. I want you to push the bounds because I want you to make as many mistakes in training as we can because we can learn from them and we can grow and not repeat them and make our plan, make our performance better. But it all depends on how you handle that mistake. If you truly look at it as a golden opportunity for growth, that's what I want. So it's those leaders that have that tremendous thirst for development and also the humility to take mistakes for what they are. And that's a way to grow. And so I've seen them. I've seen leaders be created and teach themselves or be taught how to be great leaders.
Can I ask you on a personal level, like you've been in some of the most high pressure environments ever. How are you personally handling stress or, surviving?
See all this gray? No. Um, you know, it's a really good question. Um, Life isn't supposed to be perfect. Um, it's not. And if you go into your life expecting it to be perfect, you're going to be severely disappointed. And understanding that trial, tribulation, challenge, adversity, setbacks, failures, they're a part of life. They're a necessary part of life. And I'm not saying dwell on them. I'm saying learn from them. Treat them as the golden opportunity that they are. And once you've made that mistake, once you've addressed it, once you've learned from it, put it in the rearview mirror and let it go, right? Use it for future growth and development. And so for me, I'm by no means, ask Nicole, she'll tell you, Nicole will tell you, I'm not perfect. And I'm hard to get along with and hard to live with sometimes. But, what she'll say about me is, the potential that she sees in me to be everything that she wants and needs. And she sees the fight in me, uh, to get to that person, right? I'm not there yet, and we know it. She knows it, but she sees me fighting, and she sees that I have this relentless pursuit of being what she needs me to be and what Eleanor and my older children, Reagan and Kellen, need me to be, my friends, my clients. Like I'm gonna fight like hell. I will die trying to be that person for you. So I think that's kind of how I go about life.
Mm. I want to ask you, running up to the end now, is there anything you can leave the audience with? I know you've recommended a book, but was there something someone said to you or a question or anything? If someone's going through a struggle right now, what advice would you give them?
Don't suffer in silence. That's weakness. Um, and most people think it's strength. Men, especially, when you come from a world that I came from, the alpha of alphas, right? Like suffering in silence is the worst thing that we can possibly do. That's hubris, that's ego, that's pride. And those are the things that will bring you down and cause you to fail in this world. So when you are at that point, we all have them. We all have people that the true definition of a friend is not a person that's there for you to celebrate your successes and what you've accomplished. The true definition of a friend is someone that knows you, that really knows you for your flaws, knows you for your character weaknesses, knows you for the mistakes that you've made, and still stands there with you and says, every time you fall down, I'm gonna be the first one to reach out and help you up. And we all have those people around us. It's whether we can get out of our own way and say, I need help. I'm struggling, because they'll be there for you and they'll be there for you every single time. And then you can draw inspiration from that and motivation, and then you can do that for somebody else. And then once you start down that path, it's like a snowball going downhill. It gets bigger and faster, and look out.
Honestly, I knew this episode was going to be absolutely insane, but I jotted on my notes, Mark, that not if, but when I get to the States with this podcast one day, I want you to be the first person I interview in person.
Let's do it. I'm
Thank
in.
you so much for your time.
You bet. You bet. Have a great day.